So I'm imagining like if it does make an appearance in the show, you have the episode where the restaurant critic was kidnapped. As a whiskey critic, I'm a little nervous for what will happen to the whiskey critic, in the show there.
Yeah, you should be nervous.
The Fred Minnick Show is brought to you by 291 Colorado Whiskey, by Michter's, and by Heaven Hill Brands.
And joining the Fred Minnick Show is Glenn Howerton of It's Always Sunny. How you doing, Glenn? Good to see you.
I'm good, man. How are you?
Fantastic. This is a big week for you all. You just launched a new whiskey, Four Walls. I mean, you got to be pretty excited right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a dream come true. It's not the kind of thing that I ever imagined I would do, quite honestly. I don't I never really saw myself really even as a businessman. I still don't really. So it's exciting though, because I'm putting out something that I'm a whiskey fan. It's always been my go-to ever since I started really sort of being able to appreciate the flavor of a spirit, instead of just sticking it in a Diet Coke and getting it down and getting hammered before going to a keg party or something. It's got the thing that I always return to, and I'll go explore. I like to drink wine. I like to explore the wine world. I like to explore tequilas in particular. Vodka. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody really like sit and just like savor a really fine vodka?
No, that didn't
happen. But I listen, a great like chilled shot of vodka. A very clean buzz. So there's a lot.
There's need for that, I suppose, here and there. But of course, and I've got a little bit of a saying. Vodka sucks, and it's kind of a. I have to seek a therapist about my issues with vodka. So I have really major issues when it comes to vodka, Glenn.
Why?
So,
what do you mean? Why?
It all goes back to when vodka becomes popular and starts knocking whiskey off the shelf. And then today, the business practice of vodka. First of all, my contention against vodka never has anything to do with the actual flavor of it or the brands or the people making it. It's never to do with that. It's the business practice of it. Like in order for a lot of companies, in order for a retailer to buy a single bottle of one of their allocated rare whiskeys, they'll have to buy, 10 cases of vodka in order to do that. And so
why?
Because that's the only way that they can get the retailers to buy vodka, and the retailers then put it in the front, discount it, and sell it at like 8 to 10 o'clock in the morning, to basically the people who need a drink at 8 to 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So that's the business of vodka really does suck. So I should probably update that phrase, but it doesn't go to quite the same as vodka sucks. So
it's got a good ring to it. But yeah, I don't know. There's just I'm by no means a whiskey expert, and I know that you've had some very, very educated guests on that can speak at great lengths about whiskey. I can speak at small lengths about whiskey, but I'm a consumer and have been for well over 20 years, and I've certainly tasted a lot of whiskeys.
Yeah.
Whiskey obviously being an extraordinarily broad category, right? Because there's
you all came out with Irish whiskey here. Do you like play around in Scotch, bourbon, rye whiskey, or are you solely Irish whiskey?
No, I'd say that the things I've probably had the most of are probably Scotch, rye, and Irish. Scotch was the first whiskey I'd ever had that wasn't mixed in something that was actually something you could sip on and truly enjoy. And it was something that someone bought for me before I could afford something like that in my early 20s. And that was really the turning point for me when I distinctly remember having that glass of Scotch and thinking, oh, wow, okay, that's my drink now. So for a long time, I was almost exclusively a Scotch drinker. I stayed away from bourbon for a very long time because I grew up in the South. I grew up in Alabama, and
Right.
I just got a little carried away with it when I was in when I was in high school.
Sure.
And so I think I started to associate it with almost like getting into arguments and like fights, and it just became, I started to associate it with the negative side of drinking. And I've since come to appreciate a lot of bourbons that I've tried recently, and I've come back around on it. But yeah, and rye whiskey I discovered, I don't know, maybe about 12 years ago or so. I was actually, weirdly, it happened because I was doing a diet where I was trying to stay off of certain foods. It was a very specific, like I literally had a chart that was like, don't have this. And it's like all these charts, and one of the things that apparently my body actually digests really well is rye. So I was like, oh, I should try, like Chopin rye vodka. I should try rye whiskey. So now I kind of, and then it just became something I really started to enjoy. It's interesting because what I love about a good Irish whiskey, and Irish whiskey's tough for me personally because I don't like things that are too syrupy, too sweet. But obviously Irish is a little bit sweeter, and that's also the thing that I think makes it really easy to sip and really nice to sip on, is that it's not trying to punch you in the face every single time you take a sip of it.
Yeah.
So when it's done right, when it's really dialed in and it's not too just sweet forward and it's missing all the other complexities, it can be very, very good. But on the other end of the spectrum, what I love about rye is that it's not sweet. It is sort of like a punch in the face, but I mean, or like a cold shower, right? Which is like a tough thing to do, but you feel great afterwards.
Well,
no, but I just really love rye whiskey.
I have to say, the name of the whiskey is the Irish whiskey is called Four Walls, and I get a lot of press materials from new whiskeys. This is probably one of the best kits I've ever gotten, because this is such a great slogan. Never but never question the bartender's judgment. That is so true, especially when you think about some of those great Irish pubs. And then I love the little cards that you all sent as well here. These quite a bit of humor went into these, but of course, you all have the record for the longest running live action sitcom with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I gotta imagine, like this, here we are, we're going to sip on some 15-year-old Irish whiskey. I gotta imagine that's what this was all about. It's a celebration of those 15 amazing seasons, because that is, I mean, wow, that's huge.
It's wild. Never in a million years did I not only did I not set out to be on a sitcom for what's really, technically we've done 15 seasons, but we've been doing it for 18 years in various forms or another, as it started as a home movie. Never in a million years did I imagine that I would be on a show for that long. I never even set out to do comedy, really. I always liked comedy, but here we are. And, this whiskey, it was years in the making, in the sense that we had been talking about doing something like this. And, sometimes the stars just have to align, because we wanted to do it right. And we wanted to partner with the right people. We wanted to make sure that whatever we were putting out there was, felt authentic to us. And, the celebration of the record-breaking season, combined with this, it all kind of culminated in us realizing, like, what's this really going to be about for us? And the idea of making it about bars and bartenders felt appropriate, insofar as one of the reasons why we set our show in an Irish pub is because the three of us spent a tremendous amount of time in Irish pubs in our 20s. Some of my most formative college experiences certainly were spent in Irish pubs, often drinking Irish whiskey. And, and then the significance of the show, the significance of the four walls of the bar, it just all kind of came together, and it made sense. And then the fact that, of course, hospitality workers were struggling so much during the pandemic, we of course saw it as another opportunity on top of that to donate all of our proceeds to those people in need.
Yeah, it's going to the restaurant workers in Pennsylvania, right? Like the
That's right,
proceeds for this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is true. Like I've done a few fundraisers for bartenders and restaurants, and while things are better now, they still have not fully recovered. And here in Louisville, we lost a lot of restaurants, and it's like that all over the country. And that sentiment's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we're all that we're all craving since the pandemic, especially, and it's becoming abundantly clear, is that we need community, and it's so easy to live now without ever leaving your house.
Yeah.
It's never been easier. You can order all your food in, you can have Zoom meetings, you can do podcasts over Zoom. I would, by the way, much rather be there with you.
Right on. We'd probably drain a few of these bottles while we were at it, but
nothing would make me happier. But I think we're craving. Look, we're social creatures. We're meant to live in tribes. We're meant to be a part of a community. And when we don't have that, I think it has a tremendously negative psychological effect on us. And bars have just always been a great gathering place for people to come together and, leave their troubles at the door and come inside and, just let loose. So yeah, that is what the brand is about. That is what that is what Four Walls is about. And then, of course, we wanted to do something, me being like an Irish whiskey drinker and a rye whiskey drinker, I was curious to see if we could combine sort of the best elements of both, which is why we came up with the Irish American, which you unfortunately don't have, but, is sort of a category that's, I guess, emerging, but is really not something you hear much about, is blending Irish and American whiskeys together. So that was a fun experiment too.
Yeah, that's been on the rise for a few years. It's kind of happening, quietly. And the background for that is that it's in the last decade, there's been a lot of new blood enter the whiskey world.
Yeah,
and instead of like buying and bottling the same old, you've got people saying like, well, what if I did this? What if I did that? And so I'm actually glad to see you all, take a ringer on that, because I think there's a lot of potential there in the category of blending, different spirits. I'd like to see more of that. And so,
it seems like there's a little bit of a stigma attached to it, as far as some people are concerned. I mean, we are very sort of obsessed with this idea of like, single barrel, one source, 100%, this and that, again, that that like blending is almost cheating.
Blending is a dirty word in American styles, and that goes way back to the 1890s when Canadian distillers were coming into the States, and they specialized in blending, and the American straight distillers were very much opposed to it. Mm-hmm. And so they passed a law to protect their spirit called the Bottled and Bond Act. Now, there was a lot of reasons for that, but you still see that on the shelf today. And then after Prohibition, you had blends were the only thing they could really get on the shelf, and it consisted of neutral grain spirit. And so when an old school set of consumers see a blend, in their mind it's mixed with neutral grain spirit, whereas like most of the blends on the shelf today are not that.
Right.
So, and the Kentucky distillers went as far as like completely avoiding the term blend in their marketing. So they would say they were batching, or they were marrying, or mingling. And so they used every damn word they could, but the word blend to actually describe
mingling.
Yeah.
Well, and look, the reason we did it was because, I mean, again, our focus, as we kept talking about it, as we kept kind of conceiving of what this brand was and what were we putting into the world that didn't already exist, right? Mm-hmm. The 15-year, obviously, there just aren't that many Irish whiskeys that have been aged for that long. There will be eventually, since Irish whiskey's so on the rise, but this is obviously a limited edition thing. But the Irish American blend, it felt on theme to try and create something that we like the idea of creating what we're calling the bartender's utility tool, and giving them something that they could, oh, look at that. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I'm being extremely rude, but this bottle's looking at me saying like, let's have a taste here. But
I want you to
keep talking. I'm gonna smell away here.
Yeah. So we wanted to create the bartender's utility tool. I mean, we love the idea of a bartender pouring. Look, eventually, I mean, between you and I, there will be hopefully down the line a mass market version of the Irish American blend. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that it should be great to sip on. It should be also something that you can just do shots. But the rye whiskey gives it that kind of bold finish that allows it to hold up in a cocktail in a way that I think a lot of traditional Irish whiskeys generally don't.
Just smelling the 15-year, it's got a beautiful honey nose. Like there's like some hints of citrus here. I'm just thinking that this might be a touch too classy for Paddy's Pub. I mean, I'm just not seeing anyone drinking something this good in that place.
That's the kind of thing that, Frank's probably got tucked away somewhere because he's the only one that can afford it.
So he's probably pairing it with like a deep fried crow egg or something.
Oh, the show.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's definitely off brand in that sense. I mean, these, to put out something that's not just a regular shit kick and pour it all over the bar while you're pouring shots, almost seems wrong, but we'll get there.
Damn, that is really good.
Isn't it something else?
Yeah, that's
is this the first time you're tasting it?
Yeah, actually I have been I know you're filming right now. I've been all over the place, and this was my only day to actually sit down and do any kind of tasting this week. And next week I'm actually out shooting. So I'm all over the place. This is the only time I've had a chance to actually do any tasting at all this week. And
yeah,
I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Irish single malts, but some of them will kind of have lost that, they're outside of what I would consider the Irish style. And this is nailing it. It's so pronounced on my palate. The citrus, the honey, it's floral. And I love the proof on this. Like you all didn't bottle it at like some kind of like weak ass proof that a lot of people will to stretch the bottles out. This is packing 115.6 proof, and that's what us whiskey drinkers like. So
truly, yeah, no, that's what I've grown to enjoy. I don't know if that was one of the reasons why I was drawn to a lot of rye whiskeys initially. I felt like a lot of the ones that I tasted were either cask strength or at least sort of 90 proof and above. And now it's very tough for me to drink an 80 proof whiskey. I think there's a, look, there's a place for everything, right? There's a place for an 80 proof whiskey. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And certainly for those of us who, don't necessarily aren't accustomed to like, I think if the average person who isn't like a massive whiskey fan and connoisseur were to taste that, it might be a little too much, but yeah, I really appreciate a good cask strength thing. I want to taste the full thing. I don't, it just sometimes the 80 proof say they always taste watered down to me.
They do, typically because they are. So
right.
So outside of your refined palate, of course, who has the best palate on the show for whiskey tasting?
Outside of me?
Absolutely, outside of you, absolutely.
That's a good question. Maybe Danny. I know. Look, having been to Danny's house over the years, he's always got some really great whiskeys and scotches around, and so I feel like he's definitely got an appreciation for it.
And he's had a spirit brand or two over the years, so he's been in the drinks
limoncello business.
He's got actually in Italy, when I was in Italy covering limoncello, they loved him because he helped bring limoncello some notoriety, so that came out of nowhere for them, and they were he basically saved a category that was dying,
Yeah, totally. No, it was I thought it was delicious. I mean, it's not generally the kind of thing that I drink, but as sort of like a dessert offering, I really enjoyed his limoncello.
So the show's been on for 15 seasons, and one of the things that seems to happen with a lot of these shows that resonate with people is that the streaming platforms pick them up, and I don't want to say saves it or brings new fans, but it shows the networks like how much people love a particular show because they keep streaming it over and over and over again. Do you feel like that, some of those platforms are really a big help to the longevity of the show?
Oh God, yes. Without a doubt. I think that, our sense of humor is such that, and again, I think some of this, it goes back to the fact that the three of us weren't necessarily, I shouldn't even say not necessarily, we weren't comedy people when we started this show. Now, yeah, sure. Were we funny guys? Yeah, sure. I mean, look, but I know people that are, I've got friends that are a lot funnier than I am that don't have their own show. So the show was, of course, always about making people laugh, but it was always equal parts, social commentary and us, satirizing things that we saw in the culture. And I think that we almost inadvertently created something that has a lot of rewatch value because you can catch different things each time you watch it. And I think that I really don't think, I mean, a lot of our fans of our show, even they sometimes don't get it at first. Like they'll watch an episode and be like, I didn't like that one. And then they'll watch it a year later and be like, wait. And then they'll watch it a third time and be like, oh, that's my favorite episode. A lot of my favorite music is that way.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been that person to buy an album and I force myself to listen to the whole album, even the songs I don't like, because often the songs that take the longest to kind of set in become the richest experience, the songs that I can listen to over and over and over again. And I think that without the streaming platforms, you know, it's just a lot harder for people to do that. You know, the fact that you don't have to even having it on DVD, which people did for a long time, you know, you got to go get the DVD, you got to stick it in, you know what I mean? But if you're on Netflix in Canada or Hulu in the States and you're just kind of scrolling through and you can't find something, you might go, oh, okay, all right. I can always go back to one of my old favorites.
And in this world of like, it's difficult to be funny, you know, because people, you don't want to offend people, you know, right? But the show has like it almost has like an offensive level proof of comedy, because it's gross and bizarre and just so out there. You're like, these guys are just assholes, you know, and so you almost come off that way a little bit, and it's like it's almost like safe.
Right. Well, look, it's what it is you know, it's like it's our Black Mirror, right? It's always the characters are never despicable in ways that you can't sort of identify either in yourself as an impulse that maybe you wouldn't follow up on because you try to be a good person, or in someone that you've known, someone in your family, you know, or the people that you read about in the news, and you go, what kind of person would do that? Like, you know what I mean? And so our show is an answer to that question, right? Like it's a little bit of wish fulfillment to watch terrible people fail over and over again. But often, you know, and we work very hard at this when we're writing the show, you know, we're giving the characters intentions and that I think are relatable impulses. But, you know, much like say a revenge action movie, like a Nick Cage revenge movie, you know, you might not be the guy to go out and buy a lead pipe and, you know, bash somebody over the head, even if they do deserve it. But you want to watch Nick Cage do it in a movie. You know what I mean? Because you also want to learn the lesson that, like, at the end of the day, it didn't make him feel better and it didn't bring his family back or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you need to watch somebody else perform that despicable act. It's a purging, you know? So I think there's some wish fulfillment. I think it's a purging, and I think it's meant to be a release valve. So we have to push those buttons in order to truly do that. You know, we have to take the satire to the furthest extremes, because to me that's where they're funniest and most poignant, personally.
And you know, you'll be coming to Louisville, to Bourbon and Beyond. I co-founded that festival. Very excited to have you here for that. And I know you all do more than just the show together. Is it seems to be pretty rare that people work together on a show like this and then work together outside of the show in more than one capacity. Talk a little bit about the friendships that you have formed just by working on It's Always Sunny.
Well, it's evolved so much over the years. We were friends before the show, but I think, you know, some people have been under the misconception that we like grew up together or something like that. We did not. We became friends, you know, maybe only a couple of years before we created the show together. You know, so again, it was sort of a little bit of a stars aligning type situation. And, you know, so the first few years were pretty tough because, you know, there was a lot of butting of heads. We all three of us have very strong opinions about what we like and what we don't like. And so there were just hours upon hours of arguments about how to execute something in a script or how to execute something in the edit. And, you know, but over the years, we've grown to realize that, like, now I'm it only took a few years, but after a few years, I realized I'm like, you know what? Even if I lose this argument, it's still going to be good because these guys are just so smart and funny. And, so there's so much respect amongst the three of us. I have such tremendous respect for those two guys, for their taste, for their sensibilities. We're all three also extraordinarily different, which I also think makes it work. We're not of the same mind, and yet there's a place where our minds meet, and that's the show. And now I would say the podcast as well.
And this is the first time you'll be live at Bourbon and Beyond with, as a group. That should be a lot of fun. Definitely should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we're gonna, it's people can expect that to see something that they haven't seen in the regular show. We're gonna bring it. We're not just gonna, do. I think that's maybe some of a pitfall that some podcasts can fall into. They're like, oh, people love my podcast. All I have to do is show up and sit on stage and just talk, and they'll be enamored by the fact that I'm there. I think that only goes so far. So, we're gonna have a lot of surprises for the people who come see our live shows, including being able to taste some Four Walls.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Four Walls, will we see that on the show at all? Will it make an appearance on the tube?
Well, I mean, I think probably. I can't say for sure, only because we haven't started writing the next season yet. We couldn't put it on the last season, even though we had already started talking about it. We couldn't do it then because obviously, we didn't even have the bottles then.
For sure.
But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we're actually gonna start writing season 16 in November. And yeah,
do you have to? Are you going to have to pay for product placement or like a commercial fee, or they going to cut you some slack there?
I think they'll probably cut us some slack. They FX, they've been such great partners, man. Like there's such again, it's similar there. There's a lot of mutual respect. I have so much love for those guys, that team of people over there. There's a core team over there that have been there pretty much since the beginning of our show, which, if you know anything about the entertainment business, is extraordinarily rare for people to stay in those positions for as long as those guys have. And they're a little bit, they're like the sort of TV executive versions of Rob, Charlie, and I. They've got their own little shorthand, and I just love those guys.
So I'm imagining, like, if it does make an appearance in the show, you have the episode where the restaurant critic was kidnapped. As a whiskey critic, I'm a little nervous for what will happen to the whiskey critic, in the show there.
Yeah, you should be nervous.
Yeah. But this is the whiskeys. This 15 years. Fantastic. And I know there's not a lot of bottles that are out there, and I know you're working on like having a larger release in time, but this is a long-term play, even after the show ends. Is that right? Like, you all are planning to have this whiskey for a while?
We're keeping it loose. Yeah, we're this is the drops are a little bit of a proof of concept in a way. Not only to see if the demand is there, but also to see if we're enjoying it, if we're having fun, if we're proud of the whiskey, if we like it. We've always tried to follow a very simple rule with the three of us, where it's kind of like, if we like it, if we think it's fun, then we put it out into the world. We trust that, and we trust that other people will like it too. We followed that. We followed that pretty in the exact same way with this whiskey. Tasting a lot of different blends and tasting a lot of different whiskeys until we found the one that we were like, okay, that's the one. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to say that's interesting. Like, you all kind of worked as like a tasting panel, and I know the team you worked with. There's NDAs and you can't exactly talk about where all the whiskey and stuff came from, but people who know Irish whiskey, have a good feel for for the where things come from and what have you. And in tasting this, I'll just say that at least the 15-year-old, this is probably this is at a high level of Irish whiskey, and I keep tasting this and I keep going back to it. And one of the things that I like to do when I'm tasting something for the first time is I really like to just sit down and think about it. And this is a thinking whiskey. It's making me think. And I would like to read with this. It's got like some added experiential value, I think, but it's quite wonderful. So like if you had a big hand in the 15-year-old, this is a huge home run.
Man, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, it's a huge home run for me too. That was my biggest fear going into this, is that even though I couldn't sit here and tell you, I certainly don't know even 40% of what you know about whiskey, nor have I probably even tasted.
Yeah, but your liver's in probably better shape than mine.
I like to think so. I'm going to imagine that that's true, because that makes me feel better about myself. But, but I do know what I like. And my biggest fear going into this was that I wasn't going to be able to find something that I really liked. I especially with the Irish whiskey. I've found quite a few ryes that I really, really like. There aren't that many. I tasted a lot of Irish whiskeys when we were building this brand, because I wanted to really educate myself on what was out there. And I got to say, there are very few that I like, very few Irish whiskeys that I like. But when I like them, man, it's really something, That was one of my biggest problems with bourbon for a long time. It was too sweet. Most of it was too sweet for me. But then somebody handed me a bottle of Noah's Mill, and I was like, shit, that's delicious. Also knocked me on my ass. Talk about high proof. Yeah. But anyway, I that was my biggest fear going into this, and so I'm very proud to say that these are both whiskeys that I genuinely love, again, for what it's worth, right? But that's all I have to go by. I only have my tasting palate.
Well, that's all we have. You got to figure out what you like, and but the more you learn about yourself and the way you taste, the more it'll help you down the road. But it sounds like you all are this release is coming out, and you're going to get to see how the market reacts and how you feel about it, and kind of maybe there will be a second release, or is there a plan for a second release?
Well, so no, right now, we only have these limited edition bottles. We only have the 15-year Irish and the Irish American blend.
Okay.
And there's only in existence, there are only, I think, 1,000 bottle, like 4 barrels of the 15-year, which I think is about 1,000 bottles. Maybe just under 1,000 bottles. It's only 755 of them are actually going to be available for sale. The rest will be, given it to folks like you, so they can taste it and hopefully write about it, and hopefully, help us get the word out about it, just because there's a lot to choose from out there. And I think there's only 2,500 bottles of the Irish American, but I think the long-term play, if there ends up being one, which I hope there is, because so far it's been really fun. The mass market brand will be something similar, probably, to the tier 2 Irish American that we're putting out. Again, our primary thing is about bars and bartenders, and creating a blend that bartenders can really use in anything. But we're still toying with things like the percentage of rye that we put in, and because it's amazing how little rye you can really put in there before it completely takes over.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to mess around with that. Again, this is one of the things that's fun about doing it as a limited release, is that we get to, mess around. We get to put something out there and see how it's received and take the feedback and change it.
Yeah.
If we need to.
The world is your oyster, as they say, when it comes to this. And the only issue that you will have ahead is obtaining whiskeys that you can play with. That's going to be hard. You'll probably be all right with the rye, Irish whiskey, aged, maybe.
Well,
bourbon.
It's less. I don't think. I mean, the only thing we've really discussed as a potential mass market brand isn't. We're not trying to source a 15-year Irish whiskey across the board. We actually want to put something out there that's a little bit more attainable for the average person. I mean, these are the 15 years, $1,000 bottle. And the reason it's $1,000 is because it's extinct, or this particular one that's it. There's 4 barrels of it. That's it. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out how much we were going to price that for. And given the fact that all the profits are going to go to charity, we thought, let's really price this what we think it's worth. And look, if there's anybody out there who balks at it, they go buy one, hold on to it, and then you can resell it in 5 years for $5,000. If you want to just think of it as an investment, but it was, because it was for a good cause, it made sense, and even the Irish American is $90. So it's not cheap. But it's, so eventually we'll put out something that's a little more attainable.
Right on. Well, the brand is 4 Walls, and you might have to look for it, but if you're a whiskey drinker, the avenues in which to buy something. And of course, the proceeds are going to help bartenders and restaurants in Pennsylvania. Of course, that's the home of your show, or the setting of your show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Been on for 15 seasons on FX. Glenn, thank you so much for coming on. It's a really, really good time just sipping with you. And I'm excited for you to see what you all are going to do and how, what the next steps are in whiskey.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Am I going to see you at Bourbon and Beyond? We're going to see you there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You'll see me Bourbon and Beyond. We'll do some, we'll do something.
Yeah.
We'll do something on stage or backstage, but there definitely will be whiskey. I know that. And maybe a blindfold. Maybe a blindfold.
Oh, let's do that. No, I like that. I like that. I mean, it was what, Tony Sachs, right?
Yeah. Tony.
He gave us probably our best review of the 15-year when he said it was the best, literally the best whiskey he'd ever blind tasted.
Yeah, I can see that. And I was supposed to be a judge on that same competition, but I ended up not being able to for personal reasons. But he's a good taster. Tony's a good taster.
Yeah. Well, he just won my heart. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's the whiskey critic who gets to survive the show. That's for sure. So, well, hey, Glenn, thank you so much for coming on. And I look forward to seeing you at Bourbon and Beyond in September.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, my friend.
All right, Fred. Thanks, man.